Good morning everyone, evening or afternoon, whichever it might be. Pouring with rain outside, so it's not a very good morning for me, but I'm going to ignore that, and at least the sun won't be shining and obliterating my work today. So this is week 2 of painting berries and leaves, and this week I'm going to demonstrate painting a colourful leaf. There are many ways to use watercolour, and painting leaves is a really good opportunity to use variety with our painting techniques. So last week I used the layering technique, which suited the rose hips because they had lovely smooth edges and we needed to capture that and to build up the colours. But this week I'm going to demonstrate the wet on wet technique, which I hope will create lovely blends and different colours into my painting. I've shown you the colours here that I'm actually going to use in my leaf painting, but obviously if you choose a different leaf you'll have to choose colours that suit your particular subject. I couldn't make up my mind which leaf I liked and wanted to capture, but so I'm going to sort of mingle the two, I think. I like the fact that that's got some markings on it and showing some green through, some little sort of sections of the green showing through, but this one I felt was more colourful, but it lost its stalk. I was a bit heavy-handed with it. So I'll pop those there. And it really is, and I've drawn it in a much larger size than I'm seeing it, so that it'll be nice and easy for you to follow what I'm doing. It has got some quite distinctive veining. So first of all, I'm going to use my drawing pen, open just a little way, because actually if you look closely at this leaf and many others, it has a kind of double vein going on, and if I use graffito before I start, scratching in some of the veins, but only some of the veins. Now I can't see where I went. Don't overdo it, but I'm feeling that it might work. This isn't my favourite technique, but it actually isn't bad for something like this. So there we go. Working against myself here. But I'm getting a little double scratched line appearing, which is graffito, scratching out, that's what that means. And going carefully, because when I actually pop the paint on, it should in fact sit, some of the paint will sit into my little scratched areas and leave a residue, which hopefully will look reasonably natural for my my veins. Having scratched that in, I'm actually just going to now lift out my drawn line, which I used as a guide but didn't keep strictly to painting. But I can still just see them, so that's going to be helpful. I'll know where my scratching is. Right, so it's a matter, I think, of working from light to dark. So I'm going to start with the light colours in this edge here and then build through with the deeper colours. Don't know if I leave that there whether you'll be able to see it. Might be helpful. And I can't hope to actually capture exactly what I'm seeing in that leaf, but I'm going to use it as inspiration and a guide. I've got my colours out. I've actually put the colours out into the centre here that I'm going to use in the palette and allow them to dry, so that and I've made the other the actual base of the colour nice and juicy, so that I've got a nice dried area of paint to pick up if I need to, because it will come nice and dark and strong. Right, so I'm working wet on wet, and I'm going to actually work a section at a time. I've also drawn as a guide where I want to put the sort of blemishes, but I've also created a little hole there as well, which I don't see in either leaf, but I'm actually going to pop that in anyway. So I'm only going to wet a section at a time, because then I'll keep a certain amount of control and the wetted area won't dry up before I can get to it. So this is the area that this little light patch is going to be. Right, gone right to the edge of my drawing. I've got Naples yellow to start with, which I'm actually going to just drop in here. And it is a matter of really dropping it in, because that way you haven't pushed it into the paper too much, and it'll be easier for the blending to happen. So working light over dark is helpful. It's not easy to do it the other way around at all. So remember that always. Right, then on top of that and around that, I've got some burnt sienna. So working up and over the little patch of yellow that I've popped down there. Naples yellow is a very creamy paint, and I do like the colour of it, and there isn't another one like it because it's soft, but it doesn't mix particularly well, but this blending should be all right with it. I don't tend to mix with it very often. Right, so that's the next layer of colour that I've popped on there. Being careful with the little pointed edge of the leaf. But I'm going to make that slightly deeper still with some raw umber. You may find it easier for your blendings to happen if you allow the water and the wetted area just to dry up a little bit before going in with the next layer, but I don't have the time for that, so I can't wait. But I think you'll find it'll probably work better. It won't go so flat and be easier to work with. Right, so there is a little bit of the red at the edge here, so I'm going to just pop that on the top ever so lightly and allowing it to make its own way. Watercolour really does like to make its own way without being pushed around too much in this kind of a situation, and many others. Right, so now I've got to start building up the reds. I've got quinacridone red out. It's a nice transparent colour, but obviously you don't have to use the same colours as I am. If you've got a different red that you think is going to be fine, then go with it. And as I said, you'll be using different colours for maybe your different leaves. That little veining there has shown up really well because that was a nice little light one that I created there. You can do it the other way round. You can put the paint on and then use the sgraffito on the top of the paint. That way I guess you see what's happening more easily straight away, but I did it this way round. There's no difference really. Right. Nice red going down first before I start putting the stronger colours over the top, allowing that to blend with these colours that I've already laid down, which will create probably nice orange. There was a little fold there, so I've left that to pop in afterwards. I'm using a lovely big brush, which is an 8, series 22, which in fact has got a lovely point as well. Right, so just good. I'm going to put some alizarin on the top of that, so it's now going to start getting stronger in colour. But I don't know if you can see the very tips and the edges are very, very dark, so I'm going to deal with that when I've allowed it to dry off a little bit more. So letting the point of the brush create the little pointy areas for me. I really ought to allow that to soak in, so remember that is going to be easier for you if you do that, but I'm going to go with it anyway and see what happens. I've got a purple going on now, but hoping that some of this red is going to show through, so being quite careful about popping it down and not covering the red completely. So it's still going to keep moving, so you're not going to see what you've got until a bit further on. I'm definitely going to allow it to dry a little bit more before I put that dark edge on, because otherwise I'll lose the depth of colour that I feel that it should have. And while it's still damp, there's no reason why you shouldn't go in and bring up some of the colours that you feel might have gone a little bit weak in the water. This is why it's another reason it's probably a good idea to allow it to soak in a bit more first. You'll keep the vibrancy better. Right, got another red here. I'm going to try the cadmium this time, because it's quite a bright red at the point there. I need to wet it. So I have another brush going on, so you don't have to keep washing the paint off your brush. There's my hole, so I need to work around it. I don't think there's any necessity to use masking fluid. On that. I think I'll see my veins that I've popped in there a bit better when it dries off. They're not showing up very much at the moment, but I can always scratch again if I feel that I've not done it deeply enough. But it does enable you to go right over the top there. Right, that's a nice section here to deal with now. Right, nice and red. That bit's folded. And I seem to have left some little light patches there, which I might just leave because I think they look natural. Maybe looking like little holes or something. Because obviously something's been at it here in my head. So feel free to allow things to happen that you think will make your pictures more interesting. There is quite a lot of markings in this leaf, but I can't hope to get them all, I don't think. But what I'll be doing is indicating roughly what I see. Right, getting that dark in up there with the purple. And actually just trying out, seeing what happens here with a little bit of sepia. Pop some alizarin on here. And this is still dark, so I can bring it right across. There's such a lot of colour in this leaf, it's really beautiful. Right, now that dark really I think worked quite well. I'm going to go again, but this time I'm going to try, because it's a Winsor & Newton Payne's Grey, it's got a lot of blue in it, so it's going to look good against the purple here. But create a lovely, lovely dark edge. So leave the Cotman Payne's Grey for the buildings. Put in flowers and leaves and things. Make sure you have the Winsor & Newton one. This is why a lot of artists think they don't like Payne's Grey, because I'm pretty sure they're using the wrong one. Artist quality paints are expensive, but they're the best. And they're going to help you and not work against you. Alright, look at that. Now it needs a little bit more colour coming in here. So it is quite helpful working very wet, because it's given me a lot of time to go back in. And as I said, you won't know what's here until we've... You can always lift off. We won't know what we've got here until we've allowed it to dry. So I've lifted off and just dropped a little bit more of the raw sienna in there. I'm liking it. Great fun. Slightly less complicated than the church that I was painting last week. Right, let's see what happens up here. It's really great fun blending colours and seeing what you end up with. So don't worry about it, just let it happen. Watercolour likes being left alone to make its own way. It is a good idea to have a good point on your brush though, so that you can get into the little pointed areas quite easily. Right, I'm going to drop some more of the raw sienna and the raw umber in there. And go for the red again. Point of the brush, keep your brush up straight for popping in the little pointed areas. If you use it flat, it won't work so well. I like what's happening here. I'm getting some nice marks appearing that aren't actually in the leaf particularly, but still look very leaf-like. I'm not minding at all that I'm getting some little sort of run-backs and cabbagey shapes, because again it's all looking quite natural, and that's what watercolour, if it's a mark, generally speaking, if it's a mark that the watercolour has made for you, nice edge or whatever, then it's going to actually look fine. It's when you start drawing lines around the edges of things rather than just dropping it in and allowing the watercolour to do it for you, is when it starts to look contrived, overworked and unnatural. So never surround something with a painted edge. It very rarely needs to be done, and it doesn't look good. So leaving some of that red showing through, but at the same time dropping in some of the purples. And as I think I must have mentioned before, the paint won't go past the water's edge, so you can allow it to float and move around. So I'm going to just leave that for the moment and try to work a little bit on the stalk. That's dried up, so there's no reason why I shouldn't just dampen that again. And don't touch anything that you like the look of. Don't now start going over areas that you think you've painted well and that look right. Just all a little bit spotty and interesting here, so I'm just dropping in this raw umber. Just taking care of a few of the pointy bits, making sure they're nice and dark and showing up really well. So important, those little pointy bits. Right. here's where I've got a little green patch. It's got a lighter colour around it. I've been looking at both leaves actually as I've gone along, but you don't have to make it complicated for yourselves if you don't need to do that. I just couldn't make up my mind which I preferred. Right, so there's a little green patch there, another little green patch here. They all both come off the same tree, so, and it's a quite bright green. Putting a bit of depth in it as well. I'm not sure I like it now I've done it, but I think it's alright, it'll be fine. Right, I'm going to pop the stalk in. Which has got similar colours to the colours in the actual leaf. You can change to a smaller brush if you need to for areas like that. It's looking a little bit deeper here, and it's just got some markings in, a little bit of green. I suppose the green bits are where it used to actually be green at one point, but a little bit of sepia popped along underneath is going to give it a sort of tubular appearance, which is what we need. And I think I'm going to leave my leaf now to dry, and for you to see when it's dry. I'll just put it flat over here while I talk to you about some more things. You can obviously just paint the one leaf as I just did, or you could find a collection of leaves. 3 always works, odd numbers always work, and create a little composition. And then if you do that you would need to ground it, but it doesn't really need any more than that. So that's one thing that you could do. Obviously, if you're a beginner, it's good to start off simply and just create maybe just one. Here's the one. Or you know, if you're more experienced and you feel like more of a challenge, then go for a challenge. The splattering always looks nice around a leaf, so think about that. Try not to use your pen next week because we're going to move on to working with pen a bit later. And, you know, as I said last week, it's good to get back to just using watercolour and allowing that to make the marks that we need. You could create a montage with various leaves. Leaves are going to be a lot easier to find than the berries have been, I feel. So that's quite a nice idea. Lovely thing to do, lovely thing to keep, lovely thing to give. That's another one with a selection of leaves, but just made into more of an interesting composition. But all the lovely autumn colours can be used, obviously. Just creating one leaf always works well in a picture to either use as a card or to give to someone. so that would fit into a mount, just the 2 leaves. Just one for a little present or a card, much nicer than a bought one. And again, and again. And it makes all the difference if you can have a little mount around it. So think about that. That's something you can do for some cards for people. If you did a holly leaf, that would be a nice Christmas card or present. If you want to stick with the berries, then please do, because we haven't worked on them very much as yet. And I did this week, and so there are still some berries around, but you really do have to hunt for them. Or in fact, what I did was I looked at some work that I'd done in the past and copied some of the berries that I'd painted before. So that is another thing you can do, or look at photos or Pixabay if you really, really can't find anything. But do stick with berries if you prefer to, and we'll go on to leaves, and you can go on to leaves a bit further in. Or mix the two, berries and leaves, put them in a pot. Now this is something for the more advanced, so maybe why not something like that? So lots of ideas there. Let's have a look and see. It's not completely dry yet, and I may have to go back in and do something about the bringing up the edges. So I'm going to stop, let it dry, come back to you when it's a little drier. I haven't done very much to it. I've just been sitting here waiting for it to dry, and it actually hasn't completely dried yet, but I don't think that's a big problem. I've painted the little curl back there. I've painted a little curl here and put a little curly bit on the end of it. All little things like that make a difference and create interest. Apart from that, I haven't really done anything. I think I might have just brought up a couple of little points a bit more, which you can do with the tip of your brush, but big tip, don't surround anything with a line. Just drop in the colours at the edge, and the line will appear, because that's what watercolour does. When it can't go past the water line, it will stop as a little residue and make a nice edge for you. So allow that to happen. It's good practice for you to have to do that this time. Okay, so really I think we're there. You will see it dry, obviously, completely dry, not far off now, but I'll obviously attach it. So have a lovely relaxing time painting this week, and enjoy blending and allowing your colours to bleed and blend together. Next week I'm going to demonstrate a looser technique, painting either berries or leaves, depending on what I can find. And the week after that we'll be doing backgrounds, and after that maybe some line and wash. Okay, so have a good week, take care, bye bye.